Hello, welcome to NewsClick. Today we are speaking about the Naga peace talks that are going on with the Indian government. We have with us Nandita Haksar, a prominent human rights lawyer who is now a writer full time. Welcome. Nandita, the first thing I wanted to know is, the peace talks deadline was 31st October, but it hasn't worked out, it seems. What seems to be the hitch? What do you think has gone wrong?
Well, let's not say it's gone wrong. There may still be a signing, we don't know.
Right.
But apparently, from the media, I have no other knowledge, it says that NSE and IM, which was the first group which was negotiating with government, wants a flag and a constitution.
Right.
And the government of India is not willing to concede because a country has only a flag and a constitution. Of course, till today, Kashmir had its own constitution, and every state does have its own flags. But under the present regime, there is a kind of emphasis or overemphasis on a kind of definition of a unity which talks about, well, let's say that there should be no diversity of flags and constitution. It's an old slogan of the Jansang. But anyway, so for the time being, it's stuck on the question of flag and the constitution. But today, in fact, the papers now talk about that the perhaps I have no idea, but that's what the papers tell us, that the NSE and IM has agreed that if their flag can be used on cultural occasions. Now, the other group, which is a group of several armed groups to put together, called National Naga groups, they say that no, it should also be we should also be allowed to use our flag for political purposes. So apparently that is what is the hitch. But I think behind that there is a long history, and perhaps we should really understand that history.
So this flag and constitution, is this an old demand or is this something?
Well, the oldest demand, if we look at it, the Nagas have said they want an independent country. So, right at 47, August 14, they declared themselves independent. So, I presume that that would be their own flag, their own constitution, their own state. And they have their own flag. I mean, actually, it's on top of my book, which is a rainbow colored flag. So, it is their flag. But this particular demand and its articulation as of now, I don't think it's an old demand. It's something which is much more recent.
And where is it coming from, this demand? We've seen, for instance, the Kashmir issue. Is it related in some way to a reaction
Well,
to that?
I think that there is a reaction to Kashmir here because the Naga national movement, as it started in 50s, demanded an independent state. Thereafter, a large number of the Naga underground, overground have said that, and that, sorry, I should correct myself, that it was a state of the Naga areas of India and the Naga areas of Burma.
Right.
Then that demand was sort of uh, come down one bit of at least the integration of Naga areas within India. And not even if it is not, say, an independent country, but at least it should be within India and or under one administration.
Right.
So that was the demand. And in that, like Kashmir had its own flag, its constitution. So perhaps in the negotiation, they thought they could also have negotiated a similar position. But now, with what happened in Kashmir, an abrogation or nullification of Article 370, I think the Nagas said, okay, so whatever agreement we may have, they may just abrogate the agreement. They may just put it aside. So we should at least have our flag and constitution. I think it definitely made their position more rigid.
Okay, so because we did see also a change in the position, the NNPG was not very insistent on a flag and constitution earlier, but then suddenly they seem to have decided that yes, this is very important for us. Now, how important is it for the NSCN to be for Muiva to be on board with this agreement that the Indian government is trying to thrash out?
I think it's very important because we must remember that the question now is really like this, that if the Indian government in 1997 thought that they should negotiate an Indo-Naga peace process should be initiated with the NSC and IM, There was only NSCN, there was no IM or any other.
Right.
So that's how it started. And everyone agreed, there was no disagreement, or very, very little disagreement, that they actually represent the Nagas. From 97 to 2019, the Indian intelligence agencies, and perhaps others I do not know, have made a concerted effort to divide the Nagas. And then now you have a position in which I think there are at least 5 to 6 NSCNs.
Right.
And there are 2 or 3 NNCs. So you have this group which is now called the NNG, PG, and you have the NSCN. Now, if you see a history of peace processes, Indian intelligence does this divide and rule. Or even the Mizo agreement, from what I read now, is that the present National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, it said that he bought up 6 commanders, and therefore the agreement with the Mizos was signed. Now, here perhaps they can't buy up so many, or they bought up some and they can't buy up others. So the question is that, do peace processes are an exercise in counterinsurgency, or are peace process an exercise in sharing power and making it more democratic, making our country or the constitution more democratic? That is the basic question.
What do the Naga people want? With all these factions of the various outfits, overground, underground, militant, non-militant, um, is the credibility somewhat eroded?
No, I think one thing is very clear, that the Nagas want integration of Naga inhabited areas. That is something that they have wanted right from the time of the making of the NNC. And after NNC, even the most, whether from Mr. Fizo's time to Mr. Moiva's time, whoever they are, they have said integration of Naga, all Naga areas. Beginning, as I said, they wanted the integration of Naga areas within Burma, which is now Myanmar, and India, now within India. So today I shall address only the issue of within India. So now the question is, in what form? Is it to be an Indian sovereign state, which is, I think the NSCN had given up that demand and said, within India, one administrative unit. And this is a demand which is, right across all Nagas, that the Nagas of Assam, Nagas of Arunachal, Nagas of Nagaland, Nagas of Manipur should come together in one state within the Indian constitution. And that is something which is very consistent.
So now what happens next? Now that this settlement will still be thrashed out, there will be continuing negotiations. I also wanted to ask you, what is the role of the Baptist Church? What is the role of the NGOs in, and who are the other players in this assemblage apart from NSCN and the Indian government?
Well, I think the players, as has happened right from the start, as in Kashmir, have been, a large role has been played by Western intelligence agencies. Now, that is not ever part of the discourse which I see in the media, but they have played a large role. This trifurcation idea of Kashmir being trifurcated was something put forward by the Americans right in 50s. Similarly, there was such a program of having like a Hong Kong state of the whole Northeast. So there was such program. There were in fact 4 or 5 such schemes which the Nagas rejected. So there has always been a role of the intelligence agencies in or interest in the intelligence agencies in the Northeast, and specifically on the Naga issue. That is one.
And the church, what
is
their role?
Now, church, we must just for clarification, the largest number of Nagas, I don't know whether it's 98 or 97%, are Baptists, which are linked to the American Baptist Church. Now, they are largely Nagas themselves, unlike a Catholic church where you have outsiders or South Indian or others coming as priests. The pastors and all are Nagas. To the best of my knowledge, they have also supported the issue of integration of Naga areas. However, there were 2 areas where problems arose within the church. The NSCN is largely Baptist, and the NSCN constitution says that it is for Nagaland for Christ, a Baptist Nagaland. Nagalim, as they would call it. Now, here the church was used by intelligence agencies, and perhaps it used itself as well, in opposing two aspects of the NSCN. One, some parts of the church said that it should be a peaceful movement. They opposed use of arms. That was not very strongly articulated. But the criticism of NSCN began when they went to China, and they said that they blamed the NSCN for bringing communism or socialism into Naga areas. Now, that was something which was used by Indian intelligence agencies, and there are hundreds of documents to show that. So there was a very concerted effort by the churches to make sure that the NSCN didn't go the socialist way. And its name, National Socialist Council, was a big step. And in their constitution also, they explain and they bring certain communist principles of organization and accountability within their organization. They had a collective leadership instead of one person. They had these ideas which were not very well formed, but it was then that the church started attacking. And as a counter to that, the NSCN also sort of said that no, we are as good Christians. In fact, which is a fact that when they went to China, they asked for a church to be built. So and they didn't disown their Christian beliefs or practices. So today, in any case, China has opened up and it has lots of churches. So I think uh, that the situation has changed. But there was some amount of ideological divisions which have not really been brought up, because I have brought in my book very briefly. There was an article that, if I'm not mistaken, in 1979, there was a Communist Party of Nagaland. It was called Nagaland Communist Party. We don't know very much about it. There was a strong communist movement within Myanmar, Burmese Communist Party. There was strong communist movement in Manipur with, which was fairly strong and well spread. So, what was the influence? I do not know. But during the Cold War, certainly the Western agencies and Indian intelligence agencies were afraid that maybe NSCN could bring in socialism.
And that's where the Baptist Church was
Yes.
perhaps put to use
Put to use. And even today, one of the biggest peace meetings was at Atlanta. Now, why is American Baptist Church in Atlanta holding a talks for the under armed groups in India? And NSN boycotted that.
NSCN boycotted
IM
that.
boycotted
Although
that.
they imagine also a Baptist Nagaland, or is it
Yes.
just the church?
No, it is their constitution.
So I'm just curious. We do not. We often criticize the Hindutva politics and the radical fundamentalist element in any religious politics when it comes into politics. But here, would the same yardstick apply, where the Baptist Church can be quite exclusionary and
Yes, I have criticized it, in fact, even in my book or in various articles, because a lot of the villages, in fact, I think all the Naga villages have passed a resolution over time from 70s saying that they will have only one denomination in one village. And Catholics from these villages have been thrown out. They have not been allowed to bury their dead, and some churches have been burnt. So, my question is that those of us who have fought for many years, and I think I can claim that much, that I did the first case against the Indian Army in the Supreme Court. I represented the Nagas in that, and I've written this book. But at the same time, when I criticize the Indian state, I also have a discomfort of supporting a movement which is based on a very fundamentalist ideology. Having said that, I also think that these minority fundamentalism is increased by a majoritarian Hindutva presence in the center. So there is a relationship between the two.
why is do you sense that there is a lot of conflict in India, outside of the northeast, outside of Kashmir, about what it means to be a nationalist, how
Yes.
to express that nationalism also?
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people, forgive me, but for your generation, are confused. And maybe if historically it has changed, because I think we are the last generation which was in touch with the freedom fight, freedom movement. Now that there's a total cut. But I don't think that I want to leave Indian nationalism to the BJP. I want to define my country, the place where I belong, as a place where everyone, Nagas, Kashmiris, and everyone else feels equally wanted. And in order to have that feeling of belongingness, we have to make separate kinds of provisions. Now, if we have to use family uh, metaphors, which I don't like, is that even within the family, everyone is not treated the same. I don't mean that women and men should not be treated the same, that I do not mean. But there are different talents, there are different, maybe someone interests, there may be some problem with some child, there may not be a problem, there may whatever. So this sort of having one, so-called Indian unity is a very simple, attractive idea to crores of youth who have no political background. They're not linked to the Indian national movement. They're not linked to the complexity of the debates. They do not get an idea of the complexity of this country. So, for those people, it's a very simple, very attractive slogan. And in order to break it, we have to have these very complex debates, which are very difficult in times like this.
By slogan, you mean one nation,
One nation, one constitution, one something. It seems so easy that we should all have it. It would be wonderful, but we can't.
Why do you think we can't?
Because people come from different background. Now, for instance, you and I have not ever had an army. For instance, you and I would not have a river which is dammed and this house will be go under the river. But people living in Narbada do have that. It's a reality for them. If you are in Nagaland, their people have actually grown up, my generation have grown up in the jungles because the army occupied their houses. Their experience with the Indian Armed Forces is very different from ours. So we have to take this into account in order to build up a nation and to build up a country where we can understand each other. But humiliation and repression does not bring people together.
All right. So right now, what can we say about the settlement? Is it, does it seem to you very far from coming into
I
being?
don't know. Maybe they have a settlement. The question is what kind of settlement? What do the Naga people get from that settlement? I understand two things. One is the Kashmiris and the Naga NSCN have a allergy and they have an almost allergic reaction to the word development. I understand from where that's coming because the word development that has been used uh, is a tool by the government for giving packages and SOPs. Not of that kind of development, but people are the division within Naga society of the rich and poor is growing.
Right.
How is that to be addressed? That, as a friend of the Nagas, I would say, how are you going to address? What is the division between men and women? What's a class? Because today there's a very well formed class divisions.
It's no longer a predominantly rural society
No,
as
it's not. It may be predominantly rural, but there's a class formation there. And the Nagas are deeply divided, and the upper class or the middle class certainly have a dominant role and say in all this. You don't hear the rural voices.
okay. So what I'm trying to understand is how would the rural Nagas aspirations be taken into account by the NSCN?
Well, I don't know whether they are taking them into account because there's no water, there's less and less food, there is climate change which is affecting the crops. So there are many serious problems. I don't know whether NSCN is addressing those problems of the Nagas, and villages of the Nagas are emptied of all young people because they are gone as migrant workers. So old people are suffering. There's nobody to carry water for them. There's nobody to chop the firewood. They're freezing. They're living in terrible conditions. So these are issues which must be addressed by somebody.
And the best person to do that would
If
be.
it is a Naga national movement, the Naga national movement must address it, or it will be used by somebody else to break the movement.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for taking your questions. Thanks for joining Newsclick.